When the Biden administration decided to pull the remaining U.S. troops from Afghanistan after nearly 20 years, they knew things would get ugly. But clearly, they underestimated how quickly it would all unravel. Those are Taliban fighters chanting "Death to America" outside the U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan, where they now have full control after taking over the capital city of Kabul without a fight yesterday after the president of that country fled the country. And the hours since have been chaos, with some calling it Biden's Saigon, as U.S. diplomats and their families scramble to get out, alongside Afghan civilians so desperate, some tried to hold on to U.S. planes as they took off, with at least 2 people reportedly dying after falling from one of the aircrafts. This afternoon, Biden said despite the gut-wrenching scenes playing out, he stands squarely behind his decision to withdraw from the country.
I've argued for many years that our mission should be narrowly focused on counterterrorism, not counterinsurgency or nation building.
The president went on to say it's wrong to order American troops to step up when Afghanistan's own armed forces will not. But around the world, from the U.S. to the UN, many are questioning what the past 2 decades of Americans in Afghanistan accomplished beyond a death toll that at last count stood at more than 2,400 U.S. troops, 5,500 plus contractors, allied troops, and workers and journalists, more than 66,000 Afghan forces, and more than 47,000 civilians, and all for what? I'm joined by 2 men who served in the country there for years just to see it fall in a matter of weeks. John Velis is a Bronze Star Army veteran who served 2 tours in Afghanistan on NATO's Rule of Law Task Force and then a Peace and Reconciliation team. He's now a state senator from Western Massachusetts. Senator, thank you for being here. And his former translator, Alex, who was able to come to the U.S. in 2015. Obviously, at his request, we have hidden his identity. Alex, thank you for joining us as well. Senator Velis, if I can start, thank you. If I can start with you, what was your reaction to what you saw the last 2 days and to what the president had to say this afternoon?
Well, it was gut-wrenching. The photos that you just displayed from the embassy 3 years ago, almost to the year, spent a lot of time at the embassy in the presidential palace in Kabul, sitting at a table with the Afghan government, trying to come up with solutions to have some type of a political settlement to this 20-year-old conflict. So gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching, but most of all, just for the people that are left behind right now, I just feel devastated for.
When I listened to the president this afternoon, I thought he was addressing the wrong issue. He kept saying, for those who say we should have stayed in Afghanistan, the vast majority of leaders around the world and people of America never said we should stay in Afghanistan. They're not questioning that decision. They were questioning the execution of the departure, which at least to me it seemed the president barely addressed. Did you have a different reaction?
Well, I think, and I guess I should be remiss if I didn't say this, that I'm answering these questions in my capacity as a senator and a private citizen, certainly not on behalf of the U.S. government. Yeah, I think it's less of a question of should we withdraw. I think pretty much across the board, the consensus was we'd been there for 2 decades. It was more how it was done in the middle of the fighting season. We had a peace agreement with the Taliban, the U.S. government and the Taliban. And noticeably absent from that agreement was the Afghan government. So I think there's any number of things that have taken place really over the past 2 decades you could point to that have gotten us to where we are today. But yeah, I wholly agree with the notion that it's not should we, it's how we've done it.
Alex, you asked us to disguise your identity. Could you explain to people watching what you were worried would happen if your identity was known?
Because the process of SIV for interpreter to bring them over to the United States was for the people they just served alongside with the coalition forces and United States Army forces. But the culture back in Afghanistan is different from here. The people are living under the one roof, the whole family, with their parents until their parents are alive. So, for example, the brothers and the sisters and the whole family is like the person's wife and children are not in that danger as the person's brothers and sister and dad is in danger. So my whole family is back there right now. So for their safety.
Understood, Alex. When you witnessed the scenes at the airport today, and you saw that our commitment as a country to people who made sacrifices like you do was not being honored, at least in timely fashion, leading to some catastrophic consequences, what was your reaction, Alex?
Everything besides as a human, to see another human is hanging with the airplane and begging for his life and died, it's a human tragedy. It made me very upset as a human.
And if you were approached, Alex, staying with you for 1 second, by someone in another country where the United States had involvement in the future and was contemplating, thinking of doing what you did, serve as an interpreter, and he or she was given a promise from the United States that they would be protected, would you tell them they could trust the United States to honor its promise?
To be honest, I don't think they will trust the people. And even not only those people that, like Mr. John Velis, he went over there to bring some changes to the countries.
Sure.
And other people of the United States, they give the taxes, the money went over there, all those investments, it's like simply give up.
Mm-hmm.
And
you know, Senator, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alex.
The people who gave the sacrifice of the United States and all those monies, that everything was built and everything was going in the right direction, but it was just like give up.
Senator, if I can return to you for a second. Here is President Biden giving a press conference on July 8th about what the future holds. Here's the president.
Is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. The question now is, where do they go from here? That the jury is still out. But the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
So that was the president a little more than a month ago, Senator. And you may have seen yesterday the Secretary of State on television show after television show rejecting the comparison between the United States leaving Saigon and with us leaving Kabul, which to me as a layperson seemed painfully similar. Getting back to the trust issue I just broached with Alex, our allies, should they trust our judgment, the judgment of the American leadership?
If the jury's out on that, Jim. Just in the brief break, waiting to come on the show, I got another call from an Afghan linguist who's still over there that I worked with in Afghanistan, who said that the Taliban were going door to door in his neighborhood, and he said, "I've been left behind." And I don't have a response for that right now, and that really pains me. It's heart-wrenching again. So I think this has ramifications not only for Afghanistan, but as we move forward, I think it has ramifications for any other potential conflict we may find ourselves. Trust with allies, relationships that, quite frankly, have been decimated the past several years. We need to rebuild those. And a big part of that is trust amongst our allies. When people like Alex and the gentleman I spoke to today are willing to die for us, because make no mistake about it, when we would go on foot patrols with Alex and other linguists, we would joke around, only half jokingly, to be very candid with you, that we don't want to walk next to the linguists because we could see the way that the Afghans and we could see the way that many insurgents looked at them as they walked by. They hated us because we were there and they viewed us as foreigners and oppressors. They really hated the linguists because they viewed them as sellouts to their own country. So on so many different levels, morally, socially, we need to get them all out of there, whatever the consequences may be. They all need to get out of this country, and that needs to happen yesterday.
Senator, staying with you if I can, the Taliban in the last 24 hours, particularly since they took Kabul, have tried to project an image of a kinder and gentler entity than the Taliban that we ousted 20 plus years ago. They said women will have rights, which they did not have under the Taliban before. They said they had no intention of perpetrating any violence. Are they to be believed based on their history, Senator?
The Taliban has more than a 20-year history ever since they came into power in 1996 of saying one thing and doing something else. People that I've spoken to in Afghanistan, the linguists that I've spoke to, have just said that they are being systematically targeted and executed for their affiliation working with coalition forces. So I've never hoped more in my life to be wrong, and maybe they're going to liberalize and welcome the world in there and try to be a world partner, but I'm certainly not holding my breath.
Alex, Razia John is a woman who was born in Afghanistan, moved to Massachusetts, and a while ago returned to Afghanistan to build a wonderful and beautiful school for girls there. She was with me on this show last week, and I asked her thoughts about the future of girls and women if the Taliban were to take over, even though no one in that conversation assumed to be as swift as this. This is what Razia John had to say to me. Please listen.
I think they will not do what they did 20 years ago to the woman, because the woman won't stand for that. And I think that is the greatest difference. The woman, they have a voice. And the reason that they are not ruling right now is that there are some powerful women who are standing for the right of women.
Are you as hopeful as Razia John is about the future of women and girls in your country of Afghanistan?
Like, for example, they says there was a peace negotiation was going on, like the ma'am said about they will let the women to go to education and give them the freedom because there are strong women and the women has a voice. So they got control of Afghanistan by power instead of choosing the peace negotiation and come alongside with the government. They use their power against the 300,000 armed forces and all those men. I don't think the women will raise the voice, but I hope they will give a chance of the women's to the women's that they struggles for years in hot weathers, in rain weathers, and for family economical situation, went to the school for 12 years. And after that, they went to universities and they had a hope. The people, the girls that I know personally and saw them nights, days, were studying and they recently graduated or they're about to graduate, and all their hopes of the life will be taken away from them, from millions and millions girls in Afghanistan.
Senator, we only have 30 seconds left. Are you more optimistic about the future of particularly young women, all women, but young women, girls particularly in Afghanistan?
Jim, one of the first things when I was over there, some of my predecessors told me about a young girl who was brutally raped by several villagers in a particular village. And a group, a shura, met to determine the fate of this young girl. And the collective wisdom and judgment of what they were going to do with this young girl who had been brutally raped and almost killed was they decided that they were going to kill her as an honor killing, as a way to preserve her family's reputation. That is the Taliban that we witnessed. That is the shadow courts. The current head of the Taliban is a former top judge of the Taliban shadow courts. I hope I am wrong. I hope that they have changed, but I see nothing to indicate and be hopeful right now that it's going to.
I hope you're wrong too. Senator and Alex, both appreciate your service in Afghanistan and your willingness to join with me tonight. Thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.